the mobile consumer walks into store, then what? I have no idea, but I suspect I've got a few people coming up on stage that have got plenty of idea. So I think it's probably fair to say that mobile's disrupted most industries, but nothing like it has in retail. And there's this concept of showrooming, where we're all going into stores and picking up our phones. And I've done it, and it's almost embarrassing. You're in an electronics store, and the assistant's doing a great job, but you flick open your phone, you're on Amazon. Yeah, price is a bit out of whack. So you thank him for his time and leave and make the purchase online. And actually, in real terms, about 1% of retail turnover is occurring on a mobile device. But if we look at it another way, actually mobiles are affecting and influencing around 20% of our retail purchases, according to Forrester. So already we're seeing a major influence in mobile in the retail environment. And there's loads of innovations in wallets and scanners, and Amazon just launched the Dash scanner device. So there's an awful lot happening in this space, and I know this session is going to be super interesting. So with that, I'd love to invite up on stage the panelists, led by the moderator, Donna Tam of CNET. She covers Amazon and e-commerce, so I suspect she's got a lot of insight in this space too. So let's give them a big hand.
Oh, I need to watch my heels here.
David.
Yeah, right here?
Yeah.
Hi.
I think we keep
Okay, guys, I think I'm the last one. Great.
Let's stick down there.
We're all settled? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. So first off, I'm just going to have our panelists introduce themselves and talk a little bit about what they do. I guess we start with David.
Great. David Blumenfeld with Westfield Labs. We are a digital division within the Westfield Shopping Center company. So Westfield Mall, just over here, is one of about 90 properties we have worldwide across Australia, the US, and the UK. And again, our job is really to, as shopping behaviors change, people no longer just walk into the mall. They're doing a lot of that research or exploration ahead of time, as we all know. And so our charter is really to kind of bring that digital technology and those experiences into the center as people change the way they shop.
Excellent.
Cool. I'm David Katz. I'm the head of mobile at Fanatics. Fanatics isn't necessarily a household name, but we're actually a pretty big company. We're the largest player in the licensed sports apparel industry. So if you're buying 49ers caps or Giants jerseys, that's what we sell. We do about a third under our own brand, but we do a substantial amount of our business. We run the online stores for most of the pro sports leagues in North America. So the NFL shop, Major League Baseball store, NBA, NHL, NASCAR, et cetera, et cetera. The thing that's interesting about our vertical is, I don't know that we're the only vertical, but we're the only vertical I'm aware of where the absolute leader in commerce is an e-commerce player. So in licensed sports apparel, it's not that we're the biggest doing it online, it's that the biggest is an online player. So interesting.
Hey, I'm Wesley Barrow. I am the founder and chief revenue officer of Nomi. And Nomi is an enterprise marketing platform for the physical world that basically builds software on top of sensors that we place in store in the form of cameras, Wi-Fi sensors, and Bluetooth LED beacons. And we work with over 85 major retailers and automotive manufacturers, QSR, et cetera. So we're bringing the best of Internet of Things to retail marketing and trying to change the way brick and mortar businesses really do business in this world.
And I'm Julie Wainwright. I'm the CEO and founder of RealReal.com. The RealReal is authenticated luxury consignment. We started about 3 years ago. To give you an idea, we do about a third of our business through mobile, which means we're going to do about 35 to 45 million in mobile this year. And we were sort of a late comer to mobile, but our total business is about 120 million, and we offer high-end men's fashion, women's fashion, watches, fine jewelry, and art, all authenticated and curated.
Excellent. So I think when people often talk about what happens to a consumer at a store now, you think of brick and mortar, you think of what brick and mortar can do, but we also wanted to have the discussion of what it means to be across several platforms. And I wanted to start off by asking our panelists how they define what omnichannel means, or what it means to be on multiple platforms. So if you guys just want to go down the line and talk a little bit about your definition of that and what that means for your company.
Sure. I mean, I think it ultimately is just, if you think about the way that you and I shop today or look for anything, which is there's no longer this, I think in the industry worlds that we're in, we have this delineation between online and offline.
Right.
But as you go about your day, you use your mobile device, you're online, you're on your laptop, you walk into a store, there's no delineation in your mind. I think it's just, it's making sure you're available to all the touch points that a consumer wants to do to interact with your store or your brand. And that's really what omnichannel is all about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the thing that's interesting to me is that the behaviors seem to vary. Shoppers want to purchase across. They're going to extend their purchase cycle across the devices. So, we see a surge in usage in the morning on the smartphone device. We see a surge in the evening on the tablet device. Mm-hmm. We see desktop behavior all through the day. We see channels like search that bias towards one platform. I think most retailers see most of their emails opened on mobile devices. And what we're seeing is this concept that there's like a mobile consumer and a desktop consumer is just sort of evaporating. There is no mobile, there's only commerce, and users expect to experience commerce across platforms pretty seamlessly.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with those two. I think that the other big thing is almost an internal definition of retail, because I believe that right now most major retailers are still pretty siloed when it comes to having a stores division and an e-commerce division, and then getting them to talk, and actually even speak. Like when we're in the middle of our sales cycles, we're often selling into like retail IT on one side of the house, for traditional traffic counting and things, and then we're also selling into marketing. But you would be surprised at how many times we've walked into a room and have those people, from both of those different groups literally meeting for the very first time in our meeting. It's like insane, like how little they talk internally. So I think omnichannel has to start with a very systemic understanding of just what are you trying to accomplish, and the fact that, as you said, there's no one buyer who's like only going through one channel. Like pretty much every buyer at this point is either researching first online and then walking the store, or researching first in the store and then buying online. And you have to be able to create that seamless experience that connects all those dots, pretty effectively.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking, I think omnichannel is a term that brick and mortar companies had to come to terms with because they didn't understand how to define the customer. And the truth is, it is one customer. I would prefer, I do buy quite often. I don't like to shop, and I would prefer to buy everything online. And a lot of the goods we sell are not available online unless they're in a consignment mode, which is the way we do. And I find that really frustrating. So you can't buy Chanel online unless it's consignment. You can't buy a lot of the products we sell online unless it's previously owned. And that, to me, shows a lack of respect for the buyer and the customer. And it also shows just an institutional protectionism around a brick and mortar, around real estate, to be honest. So I think you've got a competing business that doesn't know that has to make a hard transition. So they're figuring out ways to merge it. So what you just say, I see all the time when we talk to people. They're like, well, the online buyer. I'm like, online buyer? Who is that person?
I was with a retailer last week who literally said, we don't allow our customers to shop online.
Oh my gosh.
So it's definitely, like you said, church and state from that perspective. Yeah.
So you guys are finding, even with the growth of not just mobile, but growth of e-commerce, right? That's still the perception from brick and mortar companies or brands. It's difficult for them to think about it in this way. That's
I think if you talk to brands today, even from 12 months ago, there's this recognition that, oh my gosh, we have to go this direction. I don't think you talk to any retailer, maybe except for the one I talked to last week, who says we don't need to move. And I think it's accelerated tremendously over the last 12, 18 months in terms of what they need to do. But in terms of where they need to go versus where they are right now, there's a huge gap. And some companies have hired the departments and have the head of kind of the integration strategy to make that happen. Most are like, well, hey, I talked to a well-known luxury brand last week and they were talking about how they were just bringing their website in-house. So it's you run the gamut in terms of those kind of capabilities right now.
So in terms of like what David Katz and what Julie does, like you guys have a product it doesn't have a brick and mortar presence, right? It kind of redefines what a store is. I mean, for you, the store is everywhere. Can you talk a little bit about what's worked for you guys in mobile and what hasn't, and then maybe we can have a broader discussion about how brick and mortar can apply that to their business.
Sure. The thing that's interesting about sports is, maybe after religion and politics, sports is something that people have more passion around than almost anything. And the way that manifests for us on mobile is that, we really get to take advantage of the immediacy of mobile devices. We see huge surges in our traffic when something happens. On Super Bowl Sunday, over 60% of our traffic is mobile. During the last game during the Final Four games, we'd see over 70% of our traffic being mobile. I'll share one tidbit, by the way. We see surges during games. At least in the Final Four this year, we could predict the winner based on the first quarter surge. So there might be a side business there. But the point being is that because our business is about passion and immediacy, the mobile device is, the promise of mobile, right, being there in the customer's hand is really powerful for us and gives us, I think, an advantage over any brick and mortar competitor.
Can you talk a little bit about how you guys use location to aid in driving sales or to aid with attracting customers maybe to certain things?
Yeah, I mean, the most valuable thing that we can do with location is the most valuable kind of data prompt for us is team affiliation. The thing I remind people of is that if you're a Giants fan, you're really not cross-shopping Dodgers gear when it gets cheaper. So, kind of understanding the user's sports passions, the teams they care about, is very useful for us. And if we can use location to kind of get people to the teams that they care about more quickly, that's really valuable for us. It's a little bit of a double-edged sword. We do a lot of our business with people who are out of market. So, we're talking to lots of people who, went to Duke for undergrad and are living in the Bay Area and really want to get their Duke gear. So we have to be, and to get something that people are as passionate about as sports wrong, if I guess that you're a 49ers fan because you're in San Francisco and you're not, I've actually kind of offended you. So we need to be kind of very careful in understanding what location means in terms of real user behavior. And then I guess the final thing, which we're just starting to experiment about, is hitting people in stadium. With the advent of beacons and with this, increasing sophistication of both passive and active location and all the platforms, we have opportunities to understand that you're at the game and to kind of hit you with commerce opportunities there. But we're just starting to play with that now.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because we're only e-commerce, still most of our business is done on the website, but our second and most important platform are tablets, and we get a higher conversion. We see slightly different behaviors, slightly different demographics. The cart's richer for us on a tablet. Mobile is a little harder. Unlike other we do sell in flash sales. We have real scarcity in our product because we only do have one of. So it's a little harder when you have a sale, let's say, of 400 things to go through them on your phone. It's a lot easier on a tablet, and tablet's really important to us. Mobile is really important to us. Also, the conversion is less, but we get a lot of browsing. And the fact that you can let people know when their item is in stock, that they've waitlisted, that you can just notify them on the phone is actually driving people, most likely in our case, to the tablet to buy or to the desktop. So we're using the phone. We certainly transact, and our app is getting increasingly better, but it's also a marketing device for us to get it through other mechanisms.
Yeah, I think Julie brings up an interesting point. There's always this discussion about, what platforms do you develop for? Do you do tablet? Do you do smartphone? Do you do Android, iOS? Do you guys, for all of you, what's your opinion on that? Is it still better to develop for iOS first? Is there still a better conversion rate there, or has that changed at all?
That's a good question. I think it's I would say from our perspective at Labs, we generally tend to still develop more for iOS first before going to Android. Our whole kind of methodology around rolling out new products is to pilot first. So iOS tends to be kind of the pilot OS of choice. But obviously that landscape's changing. I mean, I think there's no plan that we look at in terms of a rollout opportunity where we say, you know, it's going to be iOS only. We know that if we're gonna expand the program, it has to go across both platforms.
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo that. I think it's getting, I don't think there's ever a world in which, you know, you're going to stop paying attention to iOS, but it's getting harder to say I'm going to do iOS only. You really need to support both. I think iOS still biases more strongly in the tablet form factor, but you know, that's something that I think folks will, you know, continue to watch carefully.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, we're not developing our own apps, but I think that, you know, a lot of our customers are still going iOS first. And, you know, one of the cool things I will say that some of the customers using our platform can actually use the passive analytics inside the store to understand what percentage of customers coming in have iOS versus non-iOS phones. And so sometimes they will use that as a baseline for determining which OS to invest in first. So I think that's been kind of interesting to see. And it's still been overwhelmingly, you know, iOS has typically been the heavier volume of phones we see.
So the way we did it is we developed a really good mobile responsive site first and then looked for conversion ratio to help set the development schedule. And we are iOS only right now, although we will have an Android app out at some point. But having a mobile responsive site gives you the ability to get some really good data on how people are using your product and your site in a way that just a regular website doesn't. You've got only so much development dollars, so you've got to optimize them.
So let's circle back a little bit more to brick and mortar. One of the things I think you touched on, Wesley, was talking about like in-store analytics and how you use that. So how can brick and mortar brands learn from those kind of analytics, and what does that mean for them to do mobile? Like how does that help them do a mobile product?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the biggest revolution has obviously been the iBeacon stuff, you know, that Apple announced last summer at WWDC. You know, because before that, you really just had GPS, and you had to have cell service, and there was a lot of, you know, obstacles to really getting very granular location data. So now with iBeacon and the protocol that Apple rolled out, you know, that now lets you get down to literally an end cap or a shelf, you know, level within the store. And so, you know, now if you have a mobile app, if you're a retailer that's developed your own app, or you're a QSR restaurant, or you're even a third-party app that doesn't own your own real estate, you now have the ability to get way beyond what GPS could give you, literally down to a certain category or department within the store. So, I mean, the possibilities are endless, you know, from a museum, you know, doing custom content within, you know, every room you walk into in the museum now being served up to your phone, to a grocery store being able to serve you a coupon from a CPG, you know, when you walk within range of that end cap, to, you know, some of you may have seen the press, we did this Fabergé egg hunt in New York over the last 3 weeks, where there's these huge eggs like all around New York City, and we had a beacon in every single egg that was literally detecting location of anyone that had this app on their phone that was the Fabergé egg hunt app. And so as you walked around New York City with the egg, you'd be able to get alerts saying that you were in range to check in and crack the egg. And then after 3 weeks, they were basically giving away a $70,000 Fabergé pendant to whatever person who had the app found the most eggs around the city. So it was like a, you know, that was like one of the biggest projects we did, you know, with beacons to date. But I mean, the possibilities are endless. So I think with retail, it's really just about, you know, first listening and kind of understanding what percentage of people walking into your stores actually have your app, so you can optimize your download campaigns. And then once you've got that, then going out and starting to create some light messaging and some engagement policies around, you know, how you're going to give a stickier experience to your consumers. So
if a brand hasn't gone mobile yet, should they? And if they should, which I think most of us will agree they should, how do they do it without, you know, annoying their most loyal customers? Like, how do you switch on that switch and do things like notifications and do things like alerts without really, you know, turning away your most loyal customers? I guess, David, if you want to start.
You know, I think it's a great question that I don't think has been. I think the industry is too new to say definitively what that's been, and obviously it's gonna be different for different customer bases and different preferences. But that's I think when you talk about beacons and other kind of alert type messaging when you walk into a physical location, for example, or near something, that's going to be the biggest challenge, is how do you dial it up or dial it down depending on that user's preferences, and then also give the, can you give the user the ability or the shopper the ability to toggle that for themselves as well. I mean, I think everybody knows how delicate that install of an app is and how quickly somebody will delete it based on a number of factors. So, that's, certainly that type of messaging is one of those things that you can risk an entire install base with. So it's just going to be a delicate balance and a lot of testing around that.
Yeah, anybody else? Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd emphasize the point that you made about testing. I don't think that users have a lot of tolerance for customizing their notification experience. We've kind of had this notion all along that, users will decide how many notifications they want to, they don't want to customize anything.
Too lazy. Yeah.
Yeah, and you got a lot of apps on your phone. There's a lot of content coming at people. So I think it's really on us as merchants and developers to recognize that push notification is a fairly intrusive, fairly intimate communications channel. It's super valuable, and you really need to make sure that you're optimizing the value that you're giving your customers. Because I think you're right. I mean, an app install is a fragile thing, and while they may not uninstall you, you may disappear to the 8th screen and get your notifications blocked.
Yeah.
To me, the home run becomes when I can get information that's relevant to me, and so the more that we collect metadata from the customer we have multiple ways to do that. Either you can obsess on things, what you put in carts, but abandon, also what you waitlist, so we can actually send you very personalized notification when something you've been looking for is back in stock. We're not quite there yet, but we're about this far away from doing that, and that actually, we know our customers are asking us for that. So just by having a wait list, but then getting a personalized note, hey, whatever it is, the Hermes cuff you've been looking for is here, get it now, boom, you can buy it and you're on.
Yeah, I was going to add, I think one of the things too that really helps with keeping that loyal relationship with your customer is that most people think iBeacon is just about proximity, but what we've actually found with a lot of our customers is that tapping is just as important. And the best thing about tapping is that it's a lot more tied in with intent. So whereas proximity is usually more about discovery, creating an action out of an action that may not have occurred otherwise, tapping is meant to actually support an action that you would seed with a consumer. So we have a QSR restaurant that we're testing with right now that is literally just only using beacons for tap. Because if you think about it, Apple never supported NFC. So a lot of those traditional tap-based use cases that were popular with Android, with Google Wallet and others, never worked on an iPhone. So now with iBeacon, it's not just proximity, but it's actually all the traditional tap use cases that are great too. So, being able to tap to download a coupon, or tap to pay, or tap to enter a sweepstakes, there's a whole world just around intent that's also opened up with iBeacon. That's cool.
Oh, that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Starbucks is good at that. We were
Yeah.
talking about that today. They're really good. If you're close to a Starbucks, which most cases is pretty easy to be, but they'll just let you know, hey, there's a Starbucks right here.
Yeah.
And you just walk in, pay on your app, go.
Yeah.
You can order on your way across the street, pick it up, leave. It's a very happy moment.
Great. I mean, it sounds like the bottom line is about being able to give customers these tools without inundating them with too many options that they're not going to want to use.
If you give, and I think Starbucks is a great example. I think they do a wonderful job with that. If you give users the relevant notification at the relevant moment, you've given them a gift.
Right.
But doing that is the magic.
Yep.
Well, we have a few minutes for questions, if anyone has questions for our panelists.
So,
Do we have, I think we have a mic coming around.
yeah, so just a comment about the personalization. I think it all depends upon whether customer opt in to give your preferences or not. But I think it depends. For example, push notification, what we have implemented is a time-based push notification, where we let customers decide what time they want to get the notifications, say during the weekdays or the weekends. And I think we have seen really good response on that one. Also, I think marking your items as favorite is basically customer preference, right? Basically, we tell you what my preference is. So I think regarding the preferences, if it's implemented right, they will opt in, and I think they will select their preferences. So just a comment on that one.
And that's fair. I think that if you give people a compelling reason to select preferences, yeah, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think that the point I was trying to make is sometimes we use explicit user intent as a crutch. You know, I don't need to do the analytics on the back end because I'm going to count on my users to tell me. And I think we risk putting too much back on the user.
Like your app. Like when I first opened it, I expected it to say, you're in San Francisco, so you must be a Giants fan. But instead it said, here's a button to push if you want to see what your teams could be.
Yeah.
And then I could select whoever I was a fan of in the Bay Area. And it wasn't even, you know, so it wasn't like automatically I'm a Sharks fan and a Giants fan and a, you know, a A's fan, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and we, you know, I think that we probably, and to the point, I think we're probably still a little too conservative right now. I think we wanted to start out, we're very nervous about suggesting to a Giants fan that they are an A's fan.
Right.
You know.
It's delicate.
So we've been very conservative about it. I think that there are ways, and this is, you know, it's getting the UI right. One of the things that we found in our user testing is that, you know, if you live in the Bay Area, you might love the Niners and you might hate the Niners, but you probably have an opinion. So I can probably elicit that opinion from you without making, to your point.
Oh, there, yeah. Great, back there, I think there's another question.
What about storefront monitoring? Monitoring the storefront for brand, for customer support, customer feedback, for insights about your business. Companies like Venue Labs, for example, doing some interesting stuff with that. Have you guys played with it besides sort of increase in commerce, other business value from storefront monitoring and analytics in store?
Wesley, David?
Yeah. So obviously we're not necessarily monitoring specific storefronts as kind of the aggregator of those stores. I think, you know, there's kind of this, and I think Wes can talk to it too, there's what used to be kind of the only tracking you had within any, you know, any sort of mall or I think storefront would be the door counter, and people went from literally somebody clicking the button to the video, just having surveillance cameras essentially doing your counting. You've now quickly gone from cameras to passive Wi-Fi tracking, so anybody who has their Wi-Fi on their phone, which tends to be 50 to 60% of people, depending on where you are, you can understand, okay, somebody came into the center and understand repeat visits and things like that you couldn't get with the cameras. Now down to beacons where instead of just knowing somebody's in the center or within a specific Wi-Fi zone, you're down to that specific storefront. So there's this funnel now that you're starting to see that kind of is analogous, I think, to, you know, the Google Analytics in the digital world, to Flurry, obviously, in the mobile world, that you're just starting to see. And I think it's, again, there's no absence of data. I think it's going to be to your question about how do people start to use that data to actually change things. And I know there's not a whole lot of examples yet of people doing things. I would say one in-store example that I've heard is it was a sporting goods retailer, and they basically were trying to figure out where people were going within their store, and they realized that there were a very low percentage were going to a certain shoe department because the barriers, the walls happen to be pretty high. They lowered those walls and increased traffic by, say, 20 to 30%. So just anecdotal example of how that's starting to be used. But I think with things like beacons, you will start to see, you know, like people start to manipulate down to the shelf and the product level as to how those things are displayed and ultimately purchased.
Great. I mean,
Yeah.
Wesley, you want to add to that?
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of anecdotes. I mean, Dave brought up a very good one, but you know, I mean, you can start even to get before someone walks in, like, you know, using some of our sensor technology, you can actually see how many people pass by a store before they enter. So you can actually calculate the conversion rate from someone walking by in a mall versus actually walking in, or walking by like a store in Soho and, you know, versus walking in. And the way we do it is you actually look at the difference in signal strength of a device you see. So even though it's completely anonymous and passive, there's no, you know, PI or anything being gathered, you can look at that like decibel level of the phone when you see that ping and actually determine the difference between a pattern of someone who just was walked by versus actually walking in. So we have a major retailer where we're in every store in the country, and what they do on a regular basis, they change their windows every single month. And so they literally A/B test their windows to see which windows are driving the most people in off the street every single month. which is pretty cool. Similar to A/B testing a banner ad on a website. So.
Great. With that, I think we're all out of time. But thank you, panelists, for joining us for this.